Hello, everybody, and welcome to the White Hatter YouTube News Show. I'm Brandon.
I'm Darren.
Let's get into some news topics, shall we?
In the news.
First news topic. Apple might start leasing iPhones, and here's why that could potentially be a good idea. Would you like to lease or rent your iPhone?
Well, it depends. For me, it's going to come down to what's the cost difference between purchasing a phone or leasing a phone, and what is the benefits of both. It's kind of like, do you buy a car or lease a car? So what are the particulars on this?
So again, these are just Apple rumors, and I think
Hold on. Apple rumors?
Apple rumors.
Okay. You look like a Tyrannosaurus Rex there, just saying. Rawr.
I have a T-Rex outfit.
I know you do. Anyways, back on topic.
Maybe I'll splash that picture in.
Yeah.
So where was I? Oh, yes. So I think this is something Apple might do because we're seeing carriers basically do the same thing already. So right now, you can actually pay for iPhones through installments.
Yes, you can.
And that's now all across North America. Happened in the U.S. first. Now it's here in Canada.
And that's
as well.
important because, a good example, this is an iPhone 10. When I bought it new, it was close to $1,400. Like, it was expensive.
They're about that price still.
So some people may not have that amount of money to put down on an iPhone. So you can do installment plans through Apple.
Yep.
And obviously they have some form of interest rate based upon the loan, right? Because it's basically a loan.
I was looking at that, and it's really not that different.
Okay, so it's not as
Because
if they're
you're still
charging
paying-
20% or anything like
Yeah,
that.
it's not extreme like that. It's pretty much close to the price of the product.
Oh, okay.
Because you're still paying, Apple's still making money off it regardless.
So what's the benefit of leasing? Well, sorry, continue.
So you can pay for an iPhone directly. You can
Right.
pay through installments. And
Yes.
at the end of the installments,
Right.
you've paid for the full phone and you own it.
Yeah.
The potential leasing plan is at the end of your term, you return your phone to Apple. But hey, you could get a new phone in return. Just keep paying. So basically, it's like an iPhone subscription model.
Okay, hold on. I made that sound purposely for you. There's an inside joke on that,
I'm
people.
editing a video, and you made a lot of clicks like that.
Anyways, so again, to me, it's going to come down to what are the cost benefits to this, right? Like, you can either purchase a phone straight out, you can do a payment plan through Apple for your phone. You got a lease plan. There's actually a fourth option, which is if you sign up for a mobile contract for 2 years, you can get a free phone.
Well, I mean, it's not really free. I mean,
No, but the cost, it's still a fourth option, and the cost may be still cheaper to do it that way than to lease. So, we don't know what the lease plan is yet, right?
But so I think we can kind of relate that to what I see carriers doing right now. So some carriers have a similar model where you have a 2-year contract and you pay money to have your phone and you have your cell plan.
Right.
But at the end of your contract, there's a cheaper option where you pay less monthly, but at the end of the contract, you return your phone to the carrier.
Right. And then
Which you can then assume they are either then recycling, they're reselling to cheaper markets.
they're reselling.
Yeah. So they're double dipping. They're making
they are.
twice the amount of money from the iPhone they've purchased.
Maybe not twice, but they're making some profit, right?
Yeah, true.
All right.
So why wouldn't Apple want to get in on that game?
True.
Why would Apple want a carrier to make 2 sales on one product when they can do it themselves?
Oh, good point.
Because a lot of carriers I've seen, at least here in Canada, are pushing their, I can't remember, it's called the Flex Plan or something, where at the end of your contract, you just return your phone and you can get a new phone.
So one of the benefits, much like a car, is that at the end of the lease, because they basically come out with a new iPhone almost every year now, right?
Yeah.
Every 1 to 2 years. I guess the benefit of a lease is that once your lease is up, you can just get the new phone, right?
Yeah, and that's the idea here.
And it may be cheaper in the long run for some people to do that, depending upon who that person is, right?
Right, which then Apple could then, because if you pay your phone outright, maybe you're stuck with it, you throw it out, now it becomes e-waste.
Yeah.
And maybe Apple can then get in the market of not having cheaper models.
Or it doesn't become e-waste, it becomes a prop on our set.
Or that.
Right?
Yeah.
So it becomes
Used
a prop.
for set dressing.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, it's...
I guess for me, it's going to come down to, okay, what is the cost of the lease plan, and doing a cost ratio benefit, what are the positives and negatives of the 4 options that we just spoke about: purchasing the phone, payment plan on the phone, leasing of the phone, or getting a free phone with a carrier. Like what?
Yeah, but you're still paying for the phone. And now there are carriers that have free phone plans, but the phones are usually much older.
Yeah, I mean, that's just for me as a consumer. That's what I'm going to look at. Now, for some people, like it's easier for me because of who I am and what I do and my age and the fact that I've been working a job for so long that I probably have cash in my account where I can go out and buy a cell phone for $1,400. Here you go, right? But for a lot of younger people, that may not be likely, or even for some older people who are living paycheck to paycheck, they may not be able to do that, but they may be able to lease it, right?
Food costs an extra $200 a week.
Have you seen what's going on? One of our friends, he's got a new Ford Expedition as well as a big Ram pickup 3,500 truck. He just filled up both of his vehicles the other day, close to $400. Like, oh my God. Like unbelievable. I filled up our we have a Ford Explorer, as you know. I had about a quarter of a tank left and it was almost $100. Like, it was just like, holy crow. And food is going up. The other thing that we've noticed too, boy, we've noticed this a lot, where packaging, it's the same packaging, but the amount in the packaging is less, right? So they're keeping the same price, the same packaging, but they're not putting as much of the product in there anymore. Sly little buggers they are, right? So anyways.
Yeah.
Everything's getting more expensive.
Anyway,
just saying.
Moving
Next one.
On,
That's a good one.
After that depressing tangent, EU agrees on a law that could make apps like iMessage and WhatsApp work together. So it's yet
This
to
is interesting.
formalized, and language has still yet to be developed in this potential law. But there is an agreement already agreed on to get this going. We're basically
because you know, Apple's a really good example of this. They want to maintain control of their ecosystem, right? They're very particular with that.
I still hear it from consumers today that they don't want to get off of Apple because they like their iMessage.
Right.
And they want their families on Apple because they want the iMessage ecosystem, which really doesn't matter because iMessage in the early days was very unique because it was the first messaging platform that really used data.
Yeah.
But now every platform uses data to send messages.
But you can't send messages from iMessage to Android messaging, right?
Yeah, so this is very interesting. So again, this it's called the Digital Markets Act, and
DMA.
Yeah, basically, and essentially, there's a lot of other things in here, but the main point is that platforms that have I think the cap is 4 million monthly users in Europe, will have to design features in their app that basically allows users to message other users on other platforms.
Ooh, wow.
So
well, what if I decide I don't want to do that? What if Apple says, too bad, so sad, we're not going to do that?
Well,
Is there any teeth?
Violation for the first offense is 10% of global monthly revenue. 10% of global revenue.
Did you say global?
Global. 10% globally.
Ooh.
And then for the second offense, 20%.
Ooh.
So a 20% fine from your global revenue.
Wow.
Again, these are for companies that have a $4 million user base. So 4 million users in their.
Once again, the European Union is going after these big conglomerates and trying to kind of prevent them from becoming the super uber supreme allied commanders of social media platforms, right?
Well, you see a lot of platforms like Apple who gobble up smaller companies and they basically wall them off and make sure they're only accessible in their own ecosystem.
It's not just Apple too, right? It's
Android
Amazon, right?
Meta, Facebook does.
Yes, they all do, right?
So basically, if you're a company and you're gobbling up smaller companies to build a super uber controlling platform, you still have to work with other platforms.
Yeah.
What this will look like, we don't know.
Interesting.
In addition,
I don't disagree with this, actually.
Yeah?
I don't disagree with
Well,
this.
if you buy an iPhone or an Android phone, you're kind of default locked into certain programs. That is also language in this act where you can't be biased towards your own software. So if you sell a phone, we know Apple has Safari, and it's locked into Safari.
What would be interesting, though, is to see, because Apple has the right to protect their infrastructure. I mean, before I let WhatsApp onto my platform, then WhatsApp's messaging needs to be compliant with Apple's security protocols, right? You would think.
Yeah, you would think, but I think that would probably fall under their GDPR, right?
I don't know.
So
It's
what
an
that
interesting
looks
one.
like, we don't know. And again, like I mentioned, there's also language about not being biased towards your own product. So we know Windows, when you download Windows 11, it is Windows Edge everything. It is
That's true.
hardwired into the software, and it is a pain to use another browser.
Right.
that would basically not be allowed.
So a good example, Apple products, it's Safari, right? For Android products, it's Google. So what you're telling me then is that what this law is going to say is that Apple, you have to have the ability on your platform, and if people don't want to use the Safari browser as their primary browser, you need to make it so that it's easier for them to change their primary browser from Safari to Google Chrome or to Brave or to Firefox, whatever it is.
Yeah, and there's also language around, you're able to uninstall apps you don't want.
Okay.
Because a lot of phones come pre-installed with certain apps.
Yeah.
You probably only use maybe 5% of them.
Yeah.
So you want to delete another app that has no use to you. You as a consumer would have that basic right to do that.
Oh, they're basically disrupting the whole space right now. Kind of interesting.
The question is will these changes be big enough to affect these companies worldwide?
No, I think the question is going to be the fines, are they enforceable? Because you can have all the fines in the world, but if it's not enforceable, who cares? I think that's the bigger question, right? I mean, in order for laws to have any kind of teeth, you need to have consequences, but more importantly, you can have great consequences, but if there's no follow-up to those consequences, well, then it's impotent, right? Like it's so that, to me, that's the bigger question. The bigger question is, I guess, much like we're seeing in Russia now, European Union, if Facebook or whoever it is are being silly buggers, they can basically cut the feed into the European Union, right? Like we're seeing that with Russia right now, where they're putting up that digital wall. China does the same thing. I guess, EU would have the same ability where, first offense, here's the fine. Second offense, here's the fine. If you don't pay for both, well, then guess what? You lose the ability to access the European Union for clients, which means you're going to take a huge hit in your bottom dollar.
Right. So is it more financially beneficial to stay in the market or not?
Correct.
I mean, the EU, there's a lot of people.
There is.
So that's a lot of money on the table.
There is. But the issue, again, is they can have big fines, but if there's no enforcement of those fines, then why as a company should I worry?
We have seen some companies, and the article here that's mentioned also brings up what Spotify has done in California, because California has one of the strictest consumer protection laws in the whole of the U.S. Spotify, for example, Sirius XM, it manages user data from Californian users differently than the rest of the U.S.
Yeah.
So they've made an exception, and they have different policies for different type of users. So is that what we're going to get to, where these platforms will have a different internet or a different Apple? The Apple EU is going to be very different from Apple US because the laws are so different that, again, Apple wants
But
to...
then can people just bypass that by using a VPN and showing in different countries? But I still think the bigger issue is going to be okay, they got great fines. 20% of the global income is a significant amount of money, but if there's no enforcement of that, well, then who cares, right? Well, if the third strike is you don't pay for the fine in the first case, you don't pay for the fine in the second place, well, maybe we gate you off from the European community or from Canada or wherever it is. So what that means is you're going to lose way more people who are going to be using your platform, which is going to cost you even more money in the long run, right?
Yeah. There's also language talking about how the EU could step in and split up a company if they're not being...
They're talking about that in the U.S. right now, right? At the U.S. Senate and hearings on that very issue. The questions are Amazon, Apple, Google, are they too big and should we be splitting them up, right?
Right. So you see, like, for example, Microsoft and Windows and Edge.
Yeah.
Right? Edge is Microsoft's browser.
Yeah.
But they have tightly integrated that, which makes it very difficult to use another browser.
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe the EU could step in and go, no, Edge needs to be a different company.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't disagree with that. I think it's a good idea. It's going to be interesting. So again, great law, great fines, but what's the enforcement of the fines? What does that look like? Because again, we see this in other areas. There's some great laws out there, but if the laws are not enforced, then people just ignore them. Who cares? Because nothing's going to happen, right? Or if something does happen, it's just a little slap.
Or maybe 20% they're willing to accept that loss.
Is it? Right?
I don't know.
We'd have to know what that is, right? But if all of a sudden I said to you as a company, you know what, it's 20%, and if you don't pay it, we're going to wall you off so that you don't have access to anybody in the European Union. All of a sudden, these big companies are going to stand up and pay attention to that.
True.
Right? So let's start playing hardball. Anyways, so as you can see, I'm a big believer that there needs to be consequences to actions, but those consequences need to be enforceable because if they're not, they're impotent, right? And we see that too often.
Former TikTok moderators sue over work-related trauma. So this is not the first time this has happened.
We've seen this with
moderators.
Facebook, Instagram, Meta, and other platforms as well, right? Where they're moderators and they're seeing stuff, right? Like, go ahead and talk about this.
So two former TikTok moderators are suing the company TikTok and ByteDance, which is the parent company, for not providing enough support, mental, physical well-being support, to people who are tasked to see some really horrible, evil, ugly stuff. They also claimed they're violating the California's labor laws. Again, California, some of the toughest laws and this type of stuff, that they're not fulfilling their obligations. Now, Facebook had a similar issue in 2020 where they reached a $52 million settlement to a group of moderators. $2 million. Basically claimed the same thing that they made a lawsuit about in 2018. But again, did they change anything? Don't know. It
was interesting, right? I read the article and the legal brief on this. It was actually amazing to see what some of these moderators on TikTok are actually seeing and making sure that don't get posted on that platform.
We won't repeat it here for the general audience.
Like some ugly stuff, right? Like ugly. And so as a result of that, you know that there's going to be emotional, psychological trauma associated with that. So, I kind of attribute this or compare this to what we saw in the police department before I left. There were some members who are in some specific units, like the child exploitation unit that we have, that are required every year to check in with a psychologist, right? For this very reason, right? Because those officers see horrible, evil, ugly things, right? And so as a result of that, it's important for the employer to ensure that they're doing everything they can to ensure that that employee is dealing with those issues in positive rather than negative ways, right? So there's an onus there. And so I do believe that these moderators have a good complaint here.
Well, Facebook settlement of $52 million in 2020.
I suspect that's what TikTok is going to do. I would suspect, I don't know, but I would suspect that TikTok in the end is going to pay them off and then move on. Now, having said that,
change, though?
That's the question. I will say this about TikTok, and we've said this a lot. So we don't think TikTok is an appropriate app for those under the age of 15, right? There's some really cool things, however, that young people do on TikTok. There really are. There's some not so good things, but the majority are doing some really cool things. But TikTok as a platform is probably the best social media platform on the market right now, that when it comes to parent and filtering, monitoring software and dealing with issues, they're ahead of most others out there.
Instagram is catching up.
They are.
Instagram has some new parental features built in.
And the only reason that's happening is because of the public pressure. And what's kind of funny and what I'm watching right now is there's some special interest groups that are now saying, oh, it's about time. And that they're saying, and they're, well, but they're doing it. So let's kind of focus on this point rather than going, it's a good thing that Instagram has done this, but they should have done it years ago. Yeah, but at least they're doing something about it now, right? Yep. So the other platforms are catching up for sure, and that's because of the public outcry over these issues. But I do think that moderators on these platforms, especially when they're seeing this kind of stuff, there's an onus on the employer to ensure that they're helping their employees from an emotional, psychological, physical, and social standpoint. No doubt about it.
Yep.
That's just my feeling.
Last article today. Ukraine is selling NFTs to support its military and its people.
Once again, Brandon, what's an NFT?
Non-fungible token.
Which means?
It's a public online register that basically keeps track of ownership of digital items.
Like artwork.
Artwork and other digital pieces of code.
Yeah.
There are problems with NFTs. They haven't yet been articulated to serve a general good purpose. That's why this article is very complexing, because we've seen a lot of scams, exploits, copyright infringement, and just horrible, evil, ugly things through NFTs.
We actually wrote a blog post that's on our webpage, www.thewhitehatter.ca. Go to our blog. We wrote a blog on this. I think we got to be careful saying that it doesn't have a purpose, though, right? Like, this is where you and I do have somewhat of a disagreement. For artists who are creating digital artwork, NFTs are a way for them to copyright it and to financially benefit from it,
NFTs don't fall under copyright law.
Well, no, but it allows them to track the ownership is what I'm saying, right? Like, right? So, and then they can financially benefit from that.
Unless someone steals your are in NFTs it before you do.
That's the other issue, right? And the other issue with NFTs is right now it's just chock-a-block and ripe for fraud, right?
Yep.
So like this is a good one here. What's to stop a Russian group from designing NFTs that look just like this and then selling it, saying, hey, listen, help the Ukraine by buying these things, whereas you're purchasing it and really the money's going back into Russia.
Yeah.
Because they're using blockchain. So how would you know?
Yeah.
Right? You won't know.
This is a very complexing story because again, NFTs, we've seen that they have an environmental impact because it requires technology and resources to maintain the ledgers, which may not be environmentally friendly. But here's the Ukraine using NFTs to support their people in a way of self-defense.
Which I think is a great idea.
Again, they're doing whatever they can. Like they've legalized cryptocurrency in the country because they are doing whatever they can to defend themselves.
My only concern is I can see the criminal element and maybe evil elements from other countries now kind of capitalizing on this.
Right, where you have more, maybe people who may not be familiar with the technology and they want to support the Ukraine and they want to financially benefit the Ukraine somehow, that what they do is like, oh, I'm going to buy this NFT because it's a way of supporting the country.
Yeah. When in fact you're supporting a crime group or maybe Russia.
Yeah, where they get tricked into giving it into a different entity.
That's my only concern.
That is a concern, yes.
Well, it's not the only concern, but it's a big concern to me, right? So, but it's a very interesting take on how to use technology to help fund a purpose, right?
This is the first real good use of NFTs I've seen.
Yeah, I get to the point where I've seen some artwork for NFTs.
But what purpose are they serving?
To make money from artists. Or
is NFT's purpose just to make money?
Well, I think it is. Well, I think that's one of the purposes of an NFT is to make money.
And what else?
To make money. This
so
is to
what
make
is
money.
It? So it's
an
it's
artist
just
to make money and to control their branding.
An inflated money making scheme?
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
It's just that Ukraine is using it to support their people, which I guess is a lesser of two evils.
It's a money-making scheme so that they can make money to buy more weapons or food and medical supplies or whatever they need in their fight against Russia, right? So again,
I think do whatever you can to get resources for your country and defend yourself. I
just find that NFTs are so ripe right now with fraud that there are going to be some crime groups and maybe Russian groups that are going to capitalize on this, right?
Yeah, and I've seen some legal analysis that NFTs don't fall within copyright law.
Yeah.
So I own this NFT. Well, in the
that's
court,
only that's only U.S., right? It may not be in Europe yet. We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
But in terms, that's how copyright laws are written. Most copyright laws are written in a way that
written
are written in a way that doesn't really incorporate NFTs as a proof of ownership.
Yeah, I mean,
so
whoever, I'm sure that when copyright law was created, they never considered NFTs, right?
No,
because they weren't around. So that's why courts kind of evolve and that's why case studies, right?
I'm looking for court cases. I've been actually looking for court cases that involve copyright, and copyright court cases are very complicated, but a copyright case in a courtroom that involves an NFT.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
I've yet to see a court case. It is coming. I'm sure it's happening, but I can't wait for that to happen because there's going to be a lot of very interesting discourse.
This show kind of hurt my brain because it was more of a deeper discussions on some very interesting topics.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. More granular in nature from a discussion standpoint, which is kind of cool, right? Like the Apple leasing thing was interesting, the Tick-Tock, the NFT thing, like there's some deeper discussions, at face value, great idea to raise money for Ukraine to help defend itself and its people. But on the flip side of the coin, how is it going to be now criminalized by other groups to their profit? So very interesting, right? Very, very, very interesting. But it's interesting to see how they're now using technology, NFTs, in a way that was never thought about before the conflict, the war, right? Not a conflict, it's a war, right? So very interesting.
Those are some things for all of you to think about.
Things that make you go,
digital world.
Right? Remember that song? Things that make you go, Anyways, on behalf of myself, I'm Darren.
And Brandon, thank you all so much, and we will see you all next time.
Bye now.
Bye. Thanks.